So this would be the May 2026 paper 2. Number 1A part 1 wants us to write the following numbers correct to one significant figure. Looking at this number, the first significant figure is going to be 3. Rounding that, we're going to get 0.4. Next we have 3.94. We're going to round the first significant figure, which again is 3. So that is going to round to 4. Then they want us to estimate the integer value of that particular expression. So using our approximations, this is going to be the square root of 1000 multiplied by 0.4. That is to be divided by 4. So we are going to have 0.4 multiplied by 1000. We're going to move the decimal point 1, 2, 3 spaces. So that's going to be 400. So that's the square root of 400 divided by 4. That's going to be 20 divided by 4. That's going to give us 5. Part B tells us that Aidan, Brooke, and Kaden share berries in the ratio 3 to 2 to 5 respectively. Aidan receives 12 more berries than Brooke. They want us to calculate the total number of berries shared. Looking at the ratio, we have 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 5, that's going to be 10 parts in total. We see that Aidan received 3 out of those 10 parts. So Aidan received 3 out of 10 parts. Brooke received 2 out of 10 parts. And Kaden received, let's separate those. Kaden received 5 out of those 10 parts. They also told us that Aidan receives 12 more berries than Brooke. So Aidan received 12 more than Brooke. They want to calculate the total number of berries shared. So that means that the difference between Aidan's amount and Brooke's amount, the difference between them, should be equal to 12. So that means 3 over 10 minus 2 over 10, because that's the difference between Aidan and Brooke. That's going to be 1 over 10. And we know that 1 over 10 would then be equal to 12. Therefore, 10 after 10 would be 12 multiplied by 10. That's going to be 120 berries. Part C tells us that in a sale, all prices are reduced by 15%. Part 1 says that Blake buys a book which has an original price of $16.40. They want us to calculate how much she pays for the book. Let's see what is the reduction in price. So we need to find 15%. Or another way of saying that, we need to find 15 over 100 of $16.40. Therefore, the discount received is going to be $2.46. Right, so let's see what is the price paid. Is going to be $16.40 minus that $2.46. So we're going to have 3, 1, that's 4, that's 5, 13 minus 4, that's 9. That's going to be $13.94. Part 2 tells us that Jude pays $27.20 for a toy. They want to calculate the original price of the toy. So that means that 27, let's write that better than that, $27.20 is going to be the price after the discount of 15%. So if a discount of 15% was applied, that means that the price after the discount would represent 85%. So if we know that 85% is this, we need to find 100%. I would first find for 1% by dividing both sides by 85. 85 that is. And then I would multiply this number by 100 to get 100%. So that'll be 100 multiplied by 27.20 divided by 85. And that is going to be, $32 according to the calculator. Number 2, part A tells us that A is P minus Q divided by 2R. They want us to find the value of A when P is 2, Q is minus 1, and R is 1. We're going to take these values and substitute them into our equation. So we see that A is going to be, what's the value of P? P is going to be 2. We're going to minus from that the value of Q, which is minus 1. We then divide that by r, which is going to be 1. Rather 2 by r, which is 2 by 1. So we see we get here, that's going to be 2 minus minus 1, so that would be 2 plus 1. That's 3 divided by 2. So that's going to be 3 over 2. Part 2 wants us to express Q in terms of A, P, and R. So they want to make Q the subject of the formula. We have that A is going to be P minus Q divided by 2 lots of R. Right, so let's get Q to be the subject. Firstly, I would multiply both sides of the equation by 2R. So we see that 2R, 2RA, 2Ra is going to be P minus Q. Right, we then want to get Q to be the subject. So I would add Q to both sides to get Q to be positive. Then I would minus this 2RA from both sides. We see then Q would be P minus 2RA. Part B, in the triangle EFG shown below, EG is 2x plus 3 centimeters. And the perpendicular height from F to G is x plus 5 centimeters. Given that the area of the triangle EFG is 50 centimeters squared, they want us to show that 2x squared plus 13x minus 85 is equal to 0. So we need to find the area of the triangle in terms of the given variables. The area of a triangle, area is going to be a half base by height. Right, so that's going to be a half. What's the base? That's 2x plus 3 multiplied by the height, the perpendicular height, which is x plus 5. And we know that the area is going to be equal to 50 cm squared. So let's set this equal to 50. Let's then expand and simplify. So 50 would be, expanding the brackets, we're going to have a half into 2x by x, that's going to be 2x squared. We have 2x by 5, that's going to be plus 10x. We have 3 by x, that's plus 3. We have 3 by 5, that's plus 15. And so this is going to be 3x. Simplifying, we see we have 50 is equal to a half into 2x squared plus 13x plus 15. Next, I would multiply both sides of this equation by 2. Why? To get rid of this half in front of our bracket. So we multiply this side by 2. The right-hand side, the half disappears. 50 by 2, that's going to give 100. So 100 is equal to 2x squared plus 13x plus 15. Minusing 100 from both sides, we see that 2x squared plus 13x minus 85 would be equal to 0. So we show the desired equation. Part 2 wants us to find the value of x, giving your answer corrected 2 decimal places, and they want us to show all the working. So we have that 2x squared plus 13x minus 85 is equal to 0. Now this is something we could just plug into our calculator and solve. Unfortunately, they thought about that and they told us to show all the working. So we could either go ahead and factorize if this is factorizable, or we could use the quadratic formula. Let's see if we could factorize. We use the AC method. So 2 by minus 85, that would be minus 170. Let's look for the factors of 170. For big numbers like this, the way I find the factors, I divide 170 by numbers and see if I get an integer result. So let's start with 5. So first we have 5 and 34. Let's try 10. That's 10 and 17, not 170. So let's try 15. 15 gives us 11 and a third, so it can't be that. Let's try a few more numbers. So via trial and error, we see that there are no 2 pairs of factors that neatly gives us 13. So that means we need to apply the quadratic formula. Let's extract our points A, B, and C. So A is going to be 2, B is going to be 13, and c is going to be minus 85. Setting up the equation, we have minus 13 plus or minus the square root of 13 squared minus 4 by 2 by minus 85, and that entire thing is to be divided by 2a, which is 2 by 2. So now we simplify. We have minus 13 plus or minus the square root of 169 minus, we work this out on our calculator, 2 by 4 by 85 is 680. We have a negative by a negative, so that will be plus 680. This is all divided by 4. So let's get some space right here. Then further simplify, we have minus 13, add or minus the square root of 169 plus 680. That's going to be 849. That's divided by 4. So we're going to have minus 13 plus the root of 849 over 4, as well as minus 13 minus the square root of 849 divided by 4. Working these out on the calculator, rounding to 2 decimal places, we are going to get, for the first one we get 4.03, and working out the other one, let's see, and we get minus 10.53. So we see that x1, x2 are going to be equal to 4.03 and minus 10.53 given to 2 decimal places. In the diagram below, JKL is a straight line and JKM is a right angle triangle. The line segment JM is parallel to KQ. JK is 12 centimeters and MK is 8 centimeters. They want us to determine the value of sine V. So that's this angle right here. To solve right angle triangles, we use either Pythagoras theorem or trig ratios. When we're dealing with angles, we use trig ratios. So what's the ratio for sine? That tells us that the sine of the angle, in this case V, is going to be the opposite, which in this case is 8 centimeters, divided by the hypotenuse. In this case, that's 12 centimeters. So sine V is going to be, what's that? That's 4 goes into that twice, 4 goes into this 3 times. So that's going to be 2/3. Moving right along, we want to find the length JM. JM is going to be this length right here. Right, so we could either find this angle here and use trig ratios, but the most straightforward method would be to use Pythagoras' theorem. What does Pythagoras' theorem state? Well, the a square is going to be the b square plus the c square, where the a square is the hypotenuse. So we see that 12 squared is going to be, what's b? That's going to be 8 squared plus, well, the unknown side we'll call that x squared. So we see then that 12 squared minus 8 squared is going to be x squared. Therefore, 144 minus 64 is going to be x squared. Therefore, x squared is going to be 80, and x would be the square root of 80, and that's going to be 8.94 to 2 dp, and the unit for this is centimeters. Okay, so moving right along. Part 3 wants us to find angle MKL. So let's identify that angle MKL. So that's this angle right here. M to K to L. This is going to be the obtuse angle MKL. So to find MKL, we're going to need this angle right here, and we're going to need this angle right here. In addition to that, we would need this angle here as well. So let's identify those. On second thought, we could simply find this internal angle here and minus from that, or minus that from 180, and we would then get the angle M to K to L. So let's find this angle here. We'll call it theta 1. Right, so to find this angle here, we would use the ratio cosine. We have the adjacent, the side adjacent to the angle. We have the hypotenuse. We know that cosine theta is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. Right, so solving for theta, we see that theta would be the arc cos, or the inverse cos of 2/3. Let's get that. That's going to be 48.19 degrees. Right, so that 48.19 degrees, that's going to be this angle right here. So to find the angle MKL, we subtract this angle from 180 degrees. So we have then our angle MKL is going to be 180 minus 48.19, and that's going to be 131.81 to 2 decimal places. Right, so I'll use gray to represent construction lines and black to represent the actual lines, and I'll try to get this as accurate as I could based on the ruler measurement that I have. Right, so we draw our starting line and we draw a starting point on our line, and let's then label that point as W. We know that W to X is going to be 9 centimeters. So I don't have a perfect protractor. What I will do, I'll mark the point where 9, around where 9 is going to be. Then we're going to take this is not a compass, it's a protractor, and scribe in the arc at that point. So we would open our compass to 9. That would be 9 around there. And we would then scribe our arc where 9 is. We then take our ruler and fill in the line. Then we mark that in as 9 centimeters, and we mark in that new point as X. So now we know that X to Y is going to be 5 centimeters, then Y to Z is going to be 3 centimeters. Next, let's draw in the angle of WXY, and WXY is going to be 60 degrees. WXY would be the angle about this point here, so let's construct a 60-degree angle about that point. Right, so to construct a 60-degree angle, we go ahead and firstly we open the compass a bit smaller. We go ahead and scribe our arc. We then scribe our arc. Then we use that same arc to scribe another arc up here, and then we connect these two arcs together. Right, and that point there would be our 60-degree point. We go ahead and connect that with a ruler. Oh my bad, that was supposed to be gray in a construction line, so let me redo those in a construction line. Right, now that we have construction lines, let's go ahead and connect those 2 points to get our 60-degree angle. And again, this would be another construction line. I would extend this as far out as I can. And to make sure, let's go ahead and measure that and see if it actually is 60 degrees. Okay, so we start at this point here. I'll do this in a different color. Move now a little bit bigger so I don't mark my construction lines. Right, so let's see now if this angle is indeed 60 degrees. So starting from here, let's see. And that's right around 60 degrees. So we'll call that 60 degrees. We are then told that X to Y is going to be 5 centimeters. And since I can't perfectly open this to use it as a compass, I'll measure that and mark it in. So let's see how best we can do that. So 5, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, right? So 5 would be right at this point here. Let's now take our compass and mark in that arc. And then again, that should be in a construction line. Good, and we can mark in that point there as our point Y. Good, now we could connect those two with a solid line. Okay, so now we need to get the parallel line, the line parallel to WX, which would be YZ. To do that, we need to have a line that is the same distance away from this line, WX. We could achieve that by using our compass. Right, so let's see what this distance right here is. Let's get that right here, so right. Good, so let's now go ahead and take this arc and mark on W. Right, so we see that at this point here we're going to have, oh, that is not a construction line. We are going to have this arc right here. And so let's draw one more arc to confirm that same length, and that is going to be right here. Right, so connecting these 2 points now, we would get our parallel line. So connecting these 2 points here, we should get our parallel line. Isn't exactly the same, and that's because the protractor is not the best protractor. Right, so to get this perfectly parallel, what we would do, we would use our previous point Y as a mark point. So we'll put our arc length on the line, and this shows us exactly where we need to mark to get the parallel line. Good, so now we could connect these 2 points and get our parallel line. Again, this is going to be a construction line. First arc did not have to be that big. So that will be our construction line, our parallel line. And now we would measure what the top value is going to be, and that is going to be X to Y was 5 cm, so we have 5 cm here. And then Y to Z needs to be 3 centimeters. So let's measure that and mark it in with the compass. That's going to be 1, 2, 3 units. That's going to be right. That is going to be right at this point here. That's the wrong color. That's going to be right at this point here. Right. So let's go ahead and take our compass now, or protractor compass, and mark in that arc. Right, so that 3 centimeter point, would be right here. Right, so let's take the ruler now and make that into a solid line. And that's going to be right here. Okay, and that distance is going to be 3 centimeters. At this point here, we have our Z. The last step now is to connect W to Z, and that would be our trapezium. Okay, so that would be the construction. Of course, we indicate that these 2 lines are going to be parallel lines by drawing in these 2 arrows.